Start with the vector, not the visitor. 14 July, 25. A sleepy email pings a dozen inboxes and gets archived without a second thought. Another minor planet center bulletin. Another designation that looks like a typo.
3 AI Atlas.
Someone clicks because curiosity is a muscle that twitches on its own. Someone else shrugs and goes back to calibrations. And then the line nobody expects refuses to be ignored. Interstellar origin, velocity 58 kilometers per second, trajectory.
Straight.
Not straight in the way a first draft is straight. Straight the way a decision is straight. No drift from solar wind you could swear should tug. No soft arc toward the familiar wells that have shaped every rock and snowball we have ever welcomed or feared. A path that behaves as if the background noise of the solar system were muted.
No diter. No bobble.
No obvious apology to gravity. The message is simple and rude.
I am not lost. I am not blown.
I am traveling. At Lowell, someone leans so close to the screen that a colleague jokes about buying them new glasses.
The humor dissolves.
It looks like it knows where it's going, the observer says. Then, because science adds, which is absurd unless you believe the telemetry. Debates arrive like weather fronts. You can feel the pressure change in the language. Camp 1 tightens their grip on models that have worked long enough to pay mortgages.
Comets can look weird. Asymmetric outgassing happens.
Dust and gas can fake a thruster if you catch them on a bad day.
Camp 2 sharpens knives.
A physicist in Kyoto, Daniel by name and stubborn by temperament, puts it in the cleanest box he can find. If a natural body behaves like it's guided, either our models are trash at this edge case, or the body is not natural. Occam's razor is not a toy, it's a tool. Pick the simpler cut and follow it until it fails. The reflex to talk is strong. The better reflex is to look. The core, they estimate, is 11 kilometers across. It wears a coma that glows brighter than the math likes at this distance. It is not just shedding because the sun is warm today. It is tuning its haze. It is shaping how it is seen.
An engine does that. A clever ice rock does not.
Remove the romance. Keep the rigor. If the emission is directional, the force is directional. If the force is directional, the course can be trimmed. You can fake a rudder with vapor if you understand the pressure of light and the patient violence of ions. Our engineers have been dreaming about using that trick on small probes for years. Atlas, if it is Atlas, is doing it at a scale we write grant proposals about and never get to launch. The clock starts ticking as soon as anyone says perihelion.
Early October.
Closest approach at about 1.3 astronomical units. 193 million kilometers. That sounds like far and is far, and yet in the language of orbital mechanics it is close enough to bite your lip.
2 months in human time.
2 minutes in mission time. You can't build a spacecraft in a blink. You can't coordinate national budgets in a season. But you can decide who you are. In Pasadena, someone who survived 3 decades of not this year stands in a conference room and draws arrows. From Earth, a direct intercept demands a delta V on the order of 24 kilometers per second. Dawn spent roughly 11 over its whole life. 24 is not a number, it is a wall. You can climb it, but not with the shoes you own. The idea is floated that only gets floated when people get cornered.
Mars. Atlas will pass closer to Mars orbit than to ours.
Launch from there, and the wall lowers to 5 kilometers per second.
5 is still a fight.
5 is training and timing and everything firing on the beat. 5 is not impossible. If Mars were a base. Mars is not a base. It is a laboratory a long way from the cafeteria. Launching from Mars this year would require prepositioned stages that do not exist, or autonomous infrastructure that does not exist either. It is elegant to wish. It is responsible to plan for the next time. Someone tries to make that practical. A paper is drafted for a closed meeting with a name that will never be on a poster: Planetary Rapid Intercept Architecture.
PRIA.
It suggests parking propulsion buses in Mars orbit with propellant depots that sip solar and wait like coiled springs. It suggests CubeSat swarms packaged as darts that can be flung from a mothercraft, each with its own task: imaging, sniffing, tasting, returning. It suggests a long-range beamed power array that could feed a sail in a pinch. It suggests that Mars should stop being only a geology classroom and start being a forward operating post. That is strategy. Back at the telescope, the object refuses to sit on a shelf while we argue.
Keck reads the light.
It does not like what it sees. The spectral response dodges familiar categories. Not a comfortable carbon signature. Not the glassy hush of silicates. Gaps where there should be features, like someone laid a quieting hand on certain wavelengths.
Unusual composition?
Perhaps. An unknown veneer? Perhaps. A mask?
The word gets written on a whiteboard and then erased because fiction writes faster than instruments. Eric Johansson, a plasma physicist out of Max Planck who has never met a data stream he didn't want to poke, finds a rhythm in the brightness.
Not a robust heartbeat.
A twitch, regular enough to make a metronome tilt.
Could be tumbling, he says. Could be jets.
If jets, then they are not random. If not random, then someone taught them a song. It is too easy to jump from songs to singers. Hold that impulse down with care, not contempt. There are other explanations. And yet the coma continues to act like a pilot correcting for a crosswind that doesn't exist. The tail is thin and neat when it should be sloppy and wide. An ESA astrometric report that almost nobody reads when it isn't about a new planet notes that the tail's narrowness and definition suggest a different charge and mass distribution than the family of comets we feed our students.
That is a noun. Difference.
It is humble and it is heavy.
It says, pay attention.
You can measure the world and still be moved by it. News escapes the journals and breaks into rooms that never check AR-14. A teacher in Minas Gerais brings printouts to class and says, "This is what science looks like when it is alive." A welder in Texas who uses satellites to time deliveries pauses during lunch and asks a friend, "What if it's a ship?" In Kyoto, the physicist who sharpened Occam's blade is cornered in an elevator by a reporter who wants a quote and offers a headline in exchange. He declines and later writes a better sentence: "Simplicity is not certainty. It is a direction." Markets twitch because that is what they are built to do when the sky says boo. Space tourism outfits hold briefings. Every mention of Atlas brings questions about piloted flights that none of them can answer without bluffing. Investors smell a story. Engineers smell a deadline. The words "not feasible" persevere in the mouths of people who are paid to say them until they are paid to say the opposite. Military committees that disapprove of wonder hold sober conversations about risk.
Not invasion. Not even intent.
Risk can be boring and still matter. Interstellar bodies carry unknowns. Radiation events we do not anticipate. Charged streams that tangle with our magnetosphere in unmodeled ways. These are not reasons to go quiet. They are reasons to do nothing stupid and to think before turning knobs. Philosophers leave their rooms and wear microphones. Some of them talk about the collapse of narratives. Some of them talk about the expansion.
Both words fit. Ven a culture metse ota, the schappe of the kultureshanges.
Sometimes the change is a cut. Sometimes it is a blessing dressed as a bruise. Elena Murat, a cultural psychologist with a voice like good news, says, "The impact is not only in what it proves. It's in what it permits us to say about ourselves out loud, without laughing." You can get lost in the gallery of parallels and miss the painting. In 2017, Oumuamua slid past and embarrassed us. Not because it was alien. Because it was unusual and we were unprepared to listen without shouting. We revised and we argued and we went to bed with more questions than we woke with. In 2019, Borisov came in clean, a comet from away, composition screaming cold and far. We learned and the world did not care, not enough, because the story lacked teeth.
Atlas has teeth.
Atlas is specific. Atlas gives you a date to circle and a place to point. We are not good at holding two truths, that we need time and that this is urgent. The public imagination runs on adrenaline, but missions run on patience. That gap is a problem if you want money. It is also a problem if you want trust. The way to bridge it is to treat people like adults who can handle complexity. Atlas is not a headline. It is a test of our procedural literacy.
The science inches forward.
Periodic brightness changes cohere into curves you can fit without lying to yourself.
The coma emissions point where sunlight doesn't.
The vectors look purposeful without making the leap to purpose. The models accept a new set of parameters and produce new plots that make graduate students want to dance and sleep in the same hour. The fear that we might be alone meets the fear that we might not be and realizes both are jokes that stop being funny when the sky is this near. In a meeting nobody films, someone says the quiet part. We have to decide what kind of civilization we are.
Nobody laus.
It is not a rhetorical flourish anymore. It is logistics. Are we the kind that builds a planetary intercept network because we decided the sky is a neighbor we will meet again? Are we the kind that buys one more telescope and then offers thoughts and prayers to the next object that blows past? Do we have the stomach for an always-on apparatus that waits for rare things the way a fire station waits for smoke? The engineering list gets long and specific fast. Starship class heavy lifter or SLS or both. Nuclear thermal for a big shove early or solar electric with ridiculous power for patience that pays. Aerobraking at Mars to cut staged mass before a departure window that would make a dragonfly jealous. Beamed propulsion arrays that could push a sail with a political nightmare of lasers and a promise of never needing them to be a weapon.
Cryogenic depots.
Autonomy that can fly a tight formation at 58 kilometers per second and not panic. All of it costs, and all of it is possible if the word priority changes meaning in offices that are good at saying it and bad at living it. A woman named Mariana Cortez, mission planner by training and integrator by necessity, offers a sentence that people remember because it fits in a mouth and in a ledger. Atlas forces us to integrate tech we've kept separate.
It isn't a lab.
It's a demonstration that the kit we've been stockpiling wants to work together. In a lab in Pasadena with a name that makes donors feel smart, someone restarts a shelved set of tests on high-power electric thrusters. Their hum is a new instrument in a room full of old ones, and the first time you hear it, you can feel it under your shirt like a second pulse. You realize that sound will be the metronome of the next decade if we choose to make it so.
Notbepause of Atlas Alone.
Because of everything that follows if we build a muscle instead of buying a single ticket. Outside the clean rooms and away from the meetings, the cultural echo keeps widening. A father tells a child a bedtime story in which a silent traveler from the dark teaches us how to listen. A musician writes a sequence in 43 beats because the number got stuck in their head from a thread they read and couldn't forget. A rabbi and an imam and a monk sit on a stage and share a joke about the universe finally showing up without an appointment. Laughter is good medicine for existential colds. The numbers the public doesn't see are the ones that help policy behave. Since 2017, 3 confirmed interstellar visitors. Detection capability rising as algorithms stop missing what they were never trained to find. Revised models say the true flow could be an order of magnitude higher than we guessed. That means traffic. That means we are a crossroads whether we like it or not. That means the theater of pretending we are an island is over. The question is not if someone or something returns. The question is when and how we will meet them. Not all meetings are with others. Some are with our worst habits. The cycle that eats attention for a week and forgets you the next. The headline that says alien and the correction that gets 2 likes. The funding that moves with election seasons instead of orbital seasons. You don't fix those with speeches. You fix them with institutions. You build a standing body with a mandate and a budget that does not need to beg every time a rock is interesting. You staff it with people who can say not this time and be right, and this time and be brave. There is a quieter consequence nobody writes down because it is not sexy. If Atlas is natural and weird, it will teach us how solids condense in a freezer far from any candle. If Atlas is engineered, it will teach us what engineering looks like when time and distance are the enemy. If Atlas is neither, if it is in a third category our categories cannot pronounce yet, it will teach us to hold the door open for a word we have not learned. The teachers in this story are not only objects and labs. They are people who organize their days around data and their nights around doubt. In a building with a humming vending machine, a grad student runs a cross-correlation on brightness and tail width and gets a line that is too straight to ignore. She prints it because paper is real in a way screens are not. She pins it to a corkboard and stares at it until she starts laughing because sometimes that is the only sane reaction when the world gives you exactly what you asked for and you are not ready. In another building, a man with a face so familiar to the visitor's center staff that they pretend they have not forgotten his name sits with a cup of coffee that tastes like yesterday and reads an internal memo he should not have. It argues for a permanent Mars staging capability, a phrase that would have sounded like science fiction when he started and now sounds like a maintenance line item he is annoyed we waited to write. He whispers a word that nobody hears. Finally. The philosophizing returns but with better manners. The fear of being alone bends toward the fear of being untouched. The fear of not being alone bends toward the fear of being noticed by a mirror that refuses to flatter. The useful path between them is not panic or piety. It is preparation. Preparation is not romantic. It is discipline plus time, which is another way to spell love. Atlas teaches even when it is silent. It teaches by moving like a promise and a threat at once. It teaches by leaving. Every day it is father. Every day the chance to be near shrinks. A future tense native to engineers turns into a lament native to poets. We had a window.
We made a case.
We ran the numbers.
We chose.
That sentence is durable enough to hold pride and regret in the same hand. It is the sentence grown species learn to say out loud. You can if you want, Make this personal without making it precious. Atlas is a mirror asking if your instinct in the face of a rare chance is to argue about whether a chance should exist. In your life, you had a window.
You made a case.
You ran the numbers.
You chose.
The person you are did not appear out of a vacuum, they appeared out of 1,000 small delta V decisions. Sometimes it took a lot to change a little. Sometimes a 5 instead of a 24. Sometimes a phone call.
Sometimes a refusal.
Back in public, the narrative matures because some people refuse to let it rot. A long-form piece explains why a narrow tail matters. A thread with pictures shows how a directional jet can mimic a rudder. A video by a kid with a telescope out back captures a tiny shift in brightness and says, "I recorded this with my own hands." The comments are cleaner than usual. The trolls do their work and are ignored by anyone who matters.
A community behaves like a system. It filters. It amplifies. It learns.
The painful part is admitting we will miss this one. Not because we are cowards. Because the slope of reality is steep and friction is not a sin. The useful part is turning that pain into architecture. You can write an Atlas protocol that does not wait for Atlas. You can build a network that is bored for years and then moves. You can stock orbits with machines that exist to be useful on bad timelines. You can give your children a world where the sentence "we couldn't" does not feel like the last word as often as it does now. In a city council room far from any observatory, someone asks how this notional network would help a town that still has potholes. The answer is not a slogan, it is a map. The same systems that could save you a year from now from a rock you did not see could save you tomorrow from a storm you pretended was routine. Autonomy that knows when to wake. Sensors that talk. People who train to move when the alarm is quiet and real. Resilience is fungible. You do not have to believe in aliens to believe in dignity. Meanwhile, the object keeps its counsel. It outgasses where the sun isn't. It leaves a neat line where it should leave a smudge.
It hums in graphs.
It ignores our headlines. It forces us to choose between a myth we can tweet and a plan we can build. It does not care about our choice.
It will be fine.
We are the ones with the stake. One day in late September, a layer of dust on a long-forgotten optical bench gets wiped clean. Somebody points a new piece of kit at the sky and gets a picture so sharp it makes their hands shake. The object is no bigger.
The coma is no brighter.
The data is no more conclusive than last week. But the clarity of the moment conquers the cynic in the room. The silence after is long and good. It contains the future. Imagine Mars in 10 years. Not a green world.
Not a city.
A ring of machines that wait. Propellant tanks fat with patience. A handful of human handlers who are too busy to pose for the camera. An unremarkable mass driver that flings a narrow spear of instruments into a line of math.
No anthem. No speech. It leaves. In a month, it meets a traveler. It photographs. It listens. It sniffs.
It sends a whisper home across a network that was a fantasy when you were a child. You are in a kitchen when you hear the headline on a radio that still works because people decided to fix things instead of buying new ones. You stop mid-slice and you smile. Between here and there is the long road of saying yes to boring justice, budgets that bind without breaking, international agreements that feel like chores and save your grandchildren a war, mechanical engineers saying no to scope creep and yes to tests that nobody will applaud. It is not the stuff of movies. It is the stuff that makes movies less necessary because reality grew teeth and manners. Before October ends, Atlas is smaller than your fingernail held at arm's length, and then it is smaller than a freckle, and then it is story and data and a handful of papers with footnotes like bridges between ideas. Some will keep insisting it was nothing. Some will keep insisting it was everything. Most will go back to the fold of their days and carry a new muscle in their necks that tightens when they look up.
Good.
That is growth disguised as ache. There is a closing image that does not close.
A table.
On it, a child's drawing of a dark line and a brighter line crossing. Above, a sun that looks like a sunflower because all suns look like flowers to children. Below, a blob with a tail and a name written in shaky letters.
Atlas.
The child does not know orbital mechanics. The child knows that lines meet when you try. That is the only entry-level course that matters. Names you will forget made the calls this time. Names you will remember will sign the memos next time. Your job is simpler and harder. Do not let the gap between wonder and procedure become a canyon. Do not let the loudest voices be the ones that sell you fear or comfort when both are cheap. Let the quiet people who stare at graphs teach you how to see. Do not outsource your astonishment. It is the property that keeps civilizations from turning to stone. When the object is gone, a leftover fact remains: we are different.
Not better. Not worse.
Different in a way that makes certain questions legal to ask. Why do we build only for what we can schedule? Why do we allow a cycle of hype and neglect to dictate how we touch the sky? Why did it take a silent guest to make us speak to each other like adults?
You will not answer them tonight.
You will carry them into rooms where decisions are made and make sure they do not die in committee. Somewhere in some dark now, a telescope with frost in its bones looks at a patch of sky nobody visits much. A line appears that is almost invisible. A grad student who has not slept the right way in days makes a note to check again tomorrow.
That's how it is. No trumpets. A small line. A small note. A beginning.
By the time you hear about that line, if you ever do, the plans will already be on someone's desk. A beamed power array will be treated as science or scandal. A mission patch will be sketched in the margins of a notebook. Somewhere, an engineer will wake at 3 in the morning with a solution to a thermal problem and figure out how to explain it to a manager who has not slept. This is neither glamorous nor grim. It is life at scale. It is tempting, when your throat tightens with awe or fear, to promise a clean ending. There isn't one. The visitor that came, the visitor that left, did not carry a moral.
It carried a mirror.
We looked and did not look away. We argued and did not stop.
We learned. We will learn more.
The future is not waiting with crossed arms. It is waving, impatient and kind.
You have 2 hands. Raise one.
There is a room where someone who loves numbers and hates attention sits with a stack of printed plots.
The light is punishing, the coffee is honest, and the air smells like whiteboard ink.
They run a finger over a curve and whisper a phrase that has kept our species alive longer than it had any right to be.
We don't know yet.
Then, a second phrase, almost as old and just as good.
Let's find out.
Between ignorance and action is a corridor with 1,000 doors.
Atlas opened one.
We stood at the threshold and felt everything a person can feel without breaking. Next time, we will have a key in our pocket, and a bag packed, and a friend waiting on Mars with a hand on a lever. Between now and then, build the key. Pack the bag.
Be the friend.
That is the work. It is large and it is intimate. It is many countries and it is a single classroom. It is budgets and it is bedtime stories. It is algorithms and it is a welder's hand steady on a seam. It is a father turning off a light and a mother staying up to read about a tale that was too narrow. It is you, there at the window, looking out into a night that has just become a little more yours. When the universe knocks, it does not always use a fist. Sometimes it uses a line on a chart. Sometimes it uses a comma in a bulletin you meant to delete. Sometimes it uses a name you misread and then speak as if it were part of your family.
Atlas. It fits in the mouth.
It lingers. You can taste it when you step outside and let the air of your planet remind you that you live on something that moves.
This is not the end. It is not even a pause.
It is the part where the music drops out and you hear a single instrument and understand it has been there all along, weaving in and out, waiting for you to learn the melody. 58 kilometers a second. A straight path that refuses to bow. A coma that gleams like a whisper. A tale that writes in cursive.
The rest is up to us.
Tomorrow, you will go to work. You will answer emails.
You will drink something hot.
You will forget for an hour that space just invited you to a dance that started before your grandparents were kissed. Then you will remember. Maybe when you see a headline. Maybe when a child asks why the sun is not white in pictures. Maybe when a friend says, gently, "Did you see that thing in the sky?"
You will nod.
You will say yes. And then, because you are now the kind of person who knows the difference between watching and witnessing, you will add, "We are getting ready."